RT programme in which he named a man from Kilbrittain in County Cork by the name of Dennis O'Neill, or Sonny O'Neill, as being the person that actually fired the fatal shot that day in August 1922. Now, as I said this morning, in November of 1922, Tom Barry actually brought a group of men from West Cork up into Tipperary to assist in operations up here. And two of the men actually stayed behind, one being Dennis O'Neill. And Dennis O'Neill teamed up with Paddy Lacken, and together they were involved, I'd say, in almost every major engagement of the Civil War, from November right through until the dumping of arms in 1923. Matt Ryan, who was killed above in Fileduff, he was the OC of the 3rd Southern Division at the time of his death. And following his death, Sonny O'Neill actually took over the position of OC of the 3rd Southern Division. Sonny O'Neill was born in Kilbrittain in 1889 in West Cork. He joined the RIC and became a member of the mounted branch of the RIC, which effectively were the elite, or creme de la creme in the RIC. To be a member of the mounted branch, you had actually to be able to ride a horse and control that horse while using a police-issued carbine. And it was said that you had to have an accuracy in the region of 60% while still on horseback. Sonny O'Neill volunteered for the British Army in 1915, beg your pardon, 1915. And he was such an excellent shot and he was a high caliber marksman that he was actually sent to Cahir Barracks, which was the headquarters of the South Irish Horse. And he remained there for 2 years as a musketry instructor, teaching new recruits actually how to shoot. In 1917, he volunteered to go to the front, and he went to the front as a sniper with the Royal Irish Regiment. And he was actually renowned for his discipline and his we'll say straight shooting. And he served at the front until October of 1918, and he was wounded up, we'll say invalided out of the army following a wound to his right forearm in October of 1918. He returned to his native Kilbrittain to find that his two other brothers, who had actually joined the RIC as well, had left the RIC and had joined the IRA, along with two brothers that had actually stayed at home. O'Neill approached the IRA and said that he'd be willing to offer his services to them. He was appointed training officer for the West Cork brigade of the IRA, and he was shortly in that position when he was actually asked to go into Victoria Barracks in Cork as an undercover intelligence officer. He obtained a job as a storeman in Victoria Barracks and was feeding intelligence to the IRA in relation to British Army activities. And such was the quality of intelligence that he was bringing out of the barracks in Cork that he was actually asked by headquarters in Dublin to move to Dublin. He took on a course in the College of Science in Dublin as a cover for moving to Dublin. And as an ex-RIC man and ex-British Army man, he had free access in and out of the British Army clubs in Dublin. He was also able to go in and out of Dublin Castle, and he was also able to go in and out of the RIC depot in the Phoenix Park. And again, he was feeding out information about, we'll say, activities of the what was known as the murder gang in Dublin. That was being led by a man by the name of Eugene Igo, who was a particular thorn in the side of we'll say, the IRA in Dublin. And if you like, his handler on intelligence was a man by the name of Joe Dolan. Now, Joe Dolan comes into the story when we go back to Gael na Bláth, and Collins' director of intelligence, a man by the name of Frank Thornton, was Dolan's commander. And Thornton and Dolan met O'Neill on a regular basis, collecting information from him. O'Neill actually met Michael Collins on at least one occasion, possibly two occasions, um, during this period. But Collins would have been dressed in civvy clothes, probably well muffled up in a hat and coat, not to attract attention. And the meetings took place, let's say, at night time. Now, O'Neill was subsequently actually offered a job as a messenger in the depot in Phoenix Park, and he was initially told by the IRA to take the job, but then they felt that this would curtail his intelligence gathering abilities, that he'd probably be just sitting within the depot delivering messages from one office to the other and wouldn't have access to some of the stuff he had. So the order to take the job was actually cancelled, and he moved back down to Cork in around the time that, let's say, the division started to begin. Sorry, that the treaty was signed. Now, at this stage, people began to take positions on whether, let's say, the pro-treaty side or the anti-treaty side, and the whole, let's say, the entire O'Neill family, 6 brothers and 2 sisters, all went on the anti-treaty side, and were all active during the Civil War. Dennis O'Neill actually set up 2 cavalry divisions for the IRA in West Cork, 2 columns of 60 mounted men, based in the Ballincollig area. And he also set up field kitchens for the anti-treaty side in Cork. From this, I mean, you can see that O'Neill was actually an incredibly professional soldier. I mean, he believed that an army marched on his stomach. You had to have the facilities to feed an army if they were going to prosecute a war. And he was incredibly effective. He was renowned, let's say, within the ranks of West Cork IRA for his professionalism and his discipline. On the 15th of August in 1922, O'Neill got word that a divisional meeting was about to take place in Ballinablaw, and he was asked to move up to Ballinablaw to prepare for that divisional meeting. And he based himself in Newcestown, just close to Ballinablaw. He was in Ballinablaw that morning when the decision was actually made that if the column which Michael Collins was on returned through Ballinablaw that evening, that they would attack the column. At 7:30, having waited all day for the column to return, the order was given to stand down. They started dismantling the barricade and removing the mines from the road. Most of the men that were dismissed from the scene of the ambush headed for Long's pub. Again, as we said earlier, they were anxious to quench their thirst and have a couple of pints. O'Neill, again, I say, being a totally professional soldier, decided that he was going to get food, and he headed down away from Ballinablaw village, say, if you like, north of the village, to a house called Long's, up at the top of Long's Lane, where he sat down to have a dinner. He was only shortly in the house when, Collins's column came into the ambush site, and the 3 comrades that had been left to cover the men dismantling the mine and removing the grey cart opened fire to try and give the men that were at the barricade time to get free. O'Neill heard the shooting and decided he'd go and investigate. He picked up the gun he was carrying today, which by all accounts was actually an American buffalo gun, or commonly referred to as an elephant gun, which fired a rather large bullet in around, the bullet would have been about the size of the top joint of your little finger, and had actually a flat dish type head on it. He made his way down almost to the end of Long's Lane, and beside a pier of a gate he actually climbed onto a clay bank, and he was able to observe the road below in Ballinablaw from that location. Now, Pete McPeak, who was the machine gunner in the Free State column, had actually been literally topping the bushes with heavy fire until the machine gun jammed. And when the machine gun jammed, the 3 men that had been trying to keep cover for the ambush, the remains of the ambush party, decided they were going to make a break for it. Collins, seeing the men run, let's say, back up what's known as Walsh's Lane, Ballinablaw, Collins broke cover, saying, "They're on the run, we have them now." He ran around a bend in the road just below where the monument actually is. If you were standing on the steps of the monument, he'd have gone around a slight bend on the road towards the left of the monument. As soon as he went around that bend, he placed himself in a direct line of fire from Sonny O'Neill's position. And Sonny O'Neill saw this officer suddenly appear in his sights. He'd only fired 4 shots, let's say, in the course of, from the time he'd arrived at this point. He fired another shot, and as he said himself, he dropped the officer. He didn't know it was Collins. From the range he was actually firing, you could be shooting at your own brother and you wouldn't have known them. It's probably a range of about 350, 400 yards, 420 yards maybe. As I said, the bullet he was firing was from a heavy caliber gun, a gun known as a 45-70. It was a 45 caliber bullet with a charge of 70 grains of powder behind it. It's a bullet that inflicts absolutely massive damage. I mean, the gun tests in America with that gun, where they hit targets at a 2-mile range, it had gone through 3 sheets of oak and buried itself in 14 inches of sand behind 3 sheets of oak. That was the strength of the bullet that was actually fired. The bullet hit Collins on the left side, just above the ear, and took that portion of his head away. When St. John Gogarty actually was preparing embalming his body for viewing in Dublin in Dublin City Hall, and he actually put 2 pounds of wax into the hole. That was the size of the hole in Collins's head. Now, following, say, that incident, O'Neill ended up coming up to North Tipperary. He was involved in Cremlin Big, he was involved in the incident Carini, he was also involved in Castle Connell, where John Bagot actually got killed, and he was involved in File Duff the day Matt Ryan and John Shee were both killed. Sonny O'Neill actually remained on the run until November of 1926, possibly the longest, let's say, one of the last people to come off the run. And all that time he was being hunted for and watched. Anytime let's say, Garda intelligence or military intelligence got news of where he was, there was reports transmitted back to Dublin about him. And I mean, such was the concern in relation to Sonny O'Neill that it's actually on his file. You can read it to this day on his file. This man carries a Peter the Painter pistol in his right-hand coat pocket. He carries the stock of the pistol in an inside pocket of his coat. Do not approach this man under any circumstances. He is a most dangerous individual. That's actually what was written on Sonny O'Neill's file. Be that as it may, he was never once wounded in the course of the War of Independence or the Civil War. He evaded capture all that time. And again, I could go to those things down to the fact that he was an absolute consummate professional soldier. Following the, coming off the run, he actually moved into a boarding house in Neenah owned by Mary Ann Rowan, and he actually ended up marrying Mary Ann Rowan in 1927. And his sister-in-law, Bridget Tompkins, ran a nursing home, first of all in Mitchell Street in Neenah, and subsequently where the Ormond Hotel is in Neenah. And Sonny O'Neill and his wife moved out of Mitchell Street and moved down to the Ormond Hotel. And Sonny O'Neill gardened, tilled the garden of the Ormond Hotel. And it's said that he actually fed Neenah, or supplied Neenah with vegetables out of that garden. He became involved in politics and was a member of North Tipperary Council from 1932 until his death in 1950. He served on the County Library Committee, the County Finance Committee, the Board of the Mental Hospital in Clonmel, the Clonmel Mental Hospital Visiting Committee, and numerous other bodies in the area. He was renowned for his, concern for people that were less well off. Particularly, he was renowned for his concern for the patients in the Clonmel Mental Hospital. On every visit, visiting committee visit, he was actually inquiring about the food that the patients were being fed and how they were being treated. You can read the minutes of those board meetings, and O'Neill constantly comes through for his actual humanity and concern for people. In the 1940s, he started to organise pilgrimages to Knock, and he actually returned from pilgrimage to Knock just the evening before he died. He returned on a train to Nina Station, and I think by 10 o'clock the following morning he'd actually fallen down dead. Died of a massive heart attack. Stayed in, they said before he literally hit the ground. People that I've spoken to that knew him said that he always knew Sonny O'Neill was a soldier. He always wore highly polished brown shoes and brown leggings. Even, we'll say in civilian life, he was still wearing the leggings. And a man that lived across the road from him said to me that when Sonny O'Neill opened the front door in the morning, this was in Mitchell Street, when he opened the front door in the morning, he stood for a minute or two actually in the doorway before emerging, and he scanned every side of the street. When he emerged from the house, he'd turn around and he'd make a pretense of closing the door, but all the time while he was fiddling with the lock, he was actually scanning the street again. And when whether he went up the street or down the street after emerging, he wouldn't have walked 30 or 40 yards, but he'd actually stop and look around behind him and scan the street. If he stood up to talk to someone on the street, in the course of the conversation, if the conversation lasted any length of time at all, he would turn the person around, would say, he'd keep moving, and he'd end up facing the opposite direction from where he'd started the conversation. And again, he wouldn't look at the person he was talking to. He'd always be scanning the street behind him. But he actually told a small group of close, let's say, confidants that he was the person that killed Collins. He never once boasted about the fact he killed Collins. He actually carried it. It was literally like a millstone around his neck. I mean, he said above in Knockfune, where we were earlier today, in Ryan Lackens, he said to 4 members of the Ryan Lacken family, he said, "For my sins," he said, "I have to live in the knowledge that I killed Collins." And I'd say Matt Ryan at the barracks, the house we passed on the way up there, he also said to him, he said, "I made an awful mistake that day." He said, if I could take that shot back," he said, "I'd give anything for it." I'd say he was actually haunted, to a large extent. I'd say he was haunted by it. I mean, as many of the individuals of those days were. I mean, many of them, I would say, carried an awful burden with them in later life. And I would say that Sonny O'Neill's involvement in both county council and community affairs in Neenah was his way of trying to put back something to I would say what he felt had been a wrong he had done. He died in 1950. His funeral was one of the biggest funerals of the time in North Tipperary. Eamon de Valera was represented at the funeral here. Literally, almost all the survivors of the Cork IRA travelled from Cork to be here that day. I mean, if you read the account in the Guardian of the funeral, you had Liam Deasy, you had Flora Begley, literally you named them, all the survivors from Cork. They were actually here that day. They marched in military formation from Neenah out here to Tyrone for the funeral. A narration was delivered here by Senator Sean Byrne from Roscrea on the day. Any questions in relation to this before we go over to Frank Starr's group? Yeah. In 1935, Johnny Collins, who was Michael Collins' only brother, at that stage he'd sold the farm that the Collins family had in Cork, and he'd moved to Dublin to take up a job with the Land Commission in Dublin. And I'd say again a tribute to Sonny O'Neill for his bravery and kind of the straightness of the individual. On a Sunday morning in 1935, Johnny Collins actually just happened to get up and pulled the curtains on the bedroom window, and he saw this individual standing at the front gate of the house, staring intently at the house. And he was wondering what this person was doing hanging around the house. So he came out of the house anyway, and by the time he came out the front door, the person had gone. So the family went to 10 o'clock mass in Butlerstown Church, just down the road from them that day. And the family had only just returned from mass, and Collins went into the front room downstairs at the house, and happened to be passing the window and saw the very same person standing again at the gateway. And he said, "Oh, I'm getting to the bottom of this time." And he almost ran out of the house. And as he approached the gateway, the person at the gate went to turn and walk away. And Johnny Collins called after him and said, "Come here," he said, "I want to talk to you." And the man actually stopped and turned around, and Johnny Collins said to him, he said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "You were here earlier this morning." And the answer he got from the man was, the man just looked at him and said, "You're Collins, aren't you?" And Johnny Collins said, "I am, what of it?" They said, "I have something I need to tell you." And Johnny Collins said to him, "If you have," he said, "you better come into the house." And the answer he got to that was that, "When you hear what I have to tell you," he said, "you want my uncle next or near your house." And Collins kept walking, and he just looked back and he said to him, "Well, I'll be the judge of that, you come on in." And they went into the kitchen in Collins's house, and the man identified himself as Sonny O'Neill from Nina, and he stood with his fist clenched, literally digging into the kitchen table, and he was as close as I am to ye here in front of Johnny Collins, and he said, "What I have to tell you," he says, "I'm the man that shot your brother." And the answer he got, I think it's an incredible tribute to the Collins family, and particularly to Johnny Collins. Johnny Collins said to him, well, he said, "If you are," he said, "you won't find any recriminations here." He said, "What you did was done in the heat of battle." He said, "You were a soldier doing what you believed in, as he was." He said, he said, "He served the cause he believed in. You were doing what you believed in." But he said, "I'll say this to you." He said, "If the roles were reversed, he would probably have done the same to you." And that was Johnny Collins' answer. And out of that, both Johnny Collins and Sonny O'Neill actually became friends. And Sonny O'Neill's sister-in-law died in 1948 in Gagan in Cork. And one of the first people into the church on the morning that she was buried was actually Johnny Collins. And Johnny Collins went back to the O'Neill farmhouse in Gagan that day, and he sat in the Inglenook fireplace in the country farmhouse beside Sonny O'Neill for about 2 hours, the two of them chatting intently together. And when Johnny Collins got up to leave Gagan that day, the man that walked him out to the top of the lane in his car was actually Sonny O'Neill. When Michael Collins' youngest sister died, and the family were going through her things, in her prayer book, she found a Mercury card for Sonny O'Neill. And to this day, members of the Collins family come here to this grave. I actually personally have brought some of them here myself. As the man I brought here, Sean Collins Pole, said to me, with his hand on that tombstone, he said, "Our lives," he said, "are forever linked." He said, "We're two sides of the same, two different sides of the same coin." He said, "That's what we are." He said, "We're forever linked here." Just over in the far corner here is the grave of Pat Stair, who died in Shaherla in County Limerick and was brought back here during the truce in 1921. As we were making our way over there, just a small bit about Tion here.